Everybody, welcome to another edition of The Drop. Greg Wyshynski, Arda, Öcal here with you every Monday and Thursday, wherever you get your audio podcasts as well. The NHL on ESPN YouTube. Let's start in Carolina, where a new general manager, Don Waddell, has stepped down. In comes Eric Tulsky. He joined the Carolina Hurricanes as a hockey analyst in 2015. He is now the interim general manager of the Carolina Hurricanes. Prior to this post, he graduated from Harvard. He holds a PhD in chemistry. He was also a hockey blogger for BroadStreetHockey.com. He also contributed to NHLNumbers.com. So, Greg Wyshynski, Puck Daddy, I asked you this question. With the floodgates open, Puck Daddy, when you become the GM of the New Jersey Devils, what will be your first move?
Well, now, many people feel that I am as intelligent as Eric Tulsky. I know that for a fact. But that being said, I would obviously start with culture building. The first thing I would do, Arda, is replace all pregame meals with Taylor ham, egg, and cheese, the official breakfast sandwich of the great state of New Jersey.
Not
I would
pork
remind
roll.
the players that it is, of course, Taylor ham and not pork roll. I would get Todd McFarlane, who, of course, designed the classic Edmonton Oilers third jersey back in the day, to create an awesome, snarling, satanic devil face third jersey. The sales of that jersey would obviously bolster all of the money I spent on free agents. And then finally, I would commission an aggressive human cloning campaign to grow a new Martin Brodeur by the 2025-26 season. Obviously, we need some time to gestate. We do have to get a hair sample or a blood sample from the real Marty Brodeur. But once we acquire that, I think an aggressive human cloning program could produce a new Marty Brodeur by 25-26, therefore solving the biggest problem for my team, which is goaltending.
Yeah, very Palpatine of you, first of all. Second of all,
simply make a new Martin Brodeur.
Yeah, and I just love the idea of you waiting by his office in the Prudential Center, just waiting there. And he's like, what are you doing here?
Hey, what's that syringe?
No,
don't worry about it, Marty.
That's outstanding. I hope we clip this and put this online just so that we can get Devils fans' comments on this. They're going to have a field day. I love it. Just thoughts on Eric Tulsky, though, the interim GM of the Hurricanes.
I think that guy should not be the interim GM. I think he should be the GM. I think he's brilliant. I think he's contributed so much to what the Carolina Hurricanes are. An incredible eye for talent, knows how to use the numbers, an amazing analyst, somebody I love bumping into in the press box when I see him to pick his brain on a number of topics. I have a feeling that Tom Dundon will probably get one of the 200 hockey men to be the GM. And then have Eric still be the guy that makes a lot of the big decisions for that team. But for me, make that man the general manager. He's more than earned it.
Yeah, we're obviously poking fun at the blogger part of this, but in all reality, we've seen a lot of incredibly intelligent bloggers go on to front office roles. Speaking of the Devils, Tyler Dello is another great example who handles analytics.
Give this guy the gig before somebody else does. You think he'll probably end up in Philly at some point. So just make sure you get this guy under wraps at some point to make sure he doesn't escape the franchise.
If you'll indulge me, Wish, I'd love to start with the winners and losers of the weekend. Winner, Pandemonium. Oh my gosh. I have never seen a scene like I saw in the PWHL Walter Cup final, Game 4. Overtime between Minnesota and Boston. Double overtime, in fact. Sophie Jakes scores for Minnesota. They're up 2-1 in the series. They win the Walter Cup. Wait, they're celebrating. They're throwing their equipment in the air. This is their moment. They have won the cup, except the referees get together. Hillary Knight skates over to the officials, and now they are reviewing the play. And yes, the goal gets called back eventually for goaltender interference. Oh my gosh. All of a sudden, these Minnesota players have to go back on the ice and pick up the yard sale they created, find their equipment. Imagine the adrenaline dump in that moment.
Yeah.
And then the game resumes, and moments later, Alina Mueller scores for Boston, forcing a Game 5 back in Massachusetts. What an incredible sequence of events. You couldn't have scripted that. Unbelievable.
Yeah, it literally is the nightmare scenario I've talked about forever when it comes to video review in the NHL, which is the idea that we're going to have an iconic moment spoiled by somebody being a megapixel offsides. You know what I mean? Like it seriously is one of those deals where how do you bounce back from that? And in fact, like I know we talked about this on the drop recently about showing kids in the crowd crying, but there was a kid openly weeping after this game because of the incredible swing of emotions for these teams. But you mentioned Hillary Knight. She's a colleague of both of ours. Please tell the people your interaction with Hillary Knight that night.
I actually texted her as it was happening. When the goal went in, I was like, hey, great season. You're still the GOAT. Can't wait to see you in studio. And then as the review was happening, I was like, what on earth is going on? And I'm sending her all caps text messages. And then when they score, I was like, what are you doing with the refs? What's happening here? And then when they score, I was like, oh, you gotta be kidding me. And I was like, it was like the craziest run. And it was just funny because like she's acknowledging that this is this roller coaster of emotions, like well after the fact. Unbelievable scenes though. But man, so game 5 on Wednesday. I'm going to be in the building in Lowell, awesome. Mass. Yeah, I can't wait for that. But you're right though. Like if you're Minnesota, like what athlete has been in a situation like this? Like I can't even think of maybe one or yeah, it's unbelievable. Unbelievable.
But like speaking of crushing, like the PWHL has been crushing it. Like the entire postseason has been chills and thrills galore. We talked about it on a previous episode, and like now we get to this ultimate moment. What a crowning achievement for this new league to have this game coming up this week. And I think that the streaming numbers are going to be very, very large for this game as hockey fans come to realize what happened in the penultimate game in this series. It's awesome.
Enjoy the moment. Give us a winner or loser, Wish.
Loser, penalties. Let's talk about this for a second, Arda. So Jacob Trouba gets 2 separate infractions in game 3, a slashing call, and then an elbowing penalty that was reviewed for a major, but then dropped to being a minor. Arda, you have a take on this that I think is an important one, which is the way that these penalties were administered to the Rangers.
So yeah, so to be clear, exactly what you said, Jacob Trouba in this sequence. So everyone is thinking about the elbowing call that was reviewed to see whether it was a major and ended up being a minor. Let's shelf that for now. What I'm talking about for my specific rant here is the fact that Jacob Trouba took a slashing penalty moments before the elbowing penalty. So the key here is that one player is taking 2 separate minor penalty infractions and therefore has 2 penalties that we're talking about as he goes to the box. And not incidentals, not like, oh, a roughing and a charging or something that happened at the exact same time. These are 2 separate instances, 2 separate minor penalties. In this instance, the rule book states that this would become a 4-minute power play for the opposing team at 5-on-4. If these infractions were committed by 2 different people,
right?
If, let's say, Vincent Trocheck had the slashing call and then moments later, Jacob Trouba had the elbowing minor, that would be a 2-minute 5-on-3. I wish that the rule was, even if it was the same player that committed the 2 separate infractions, that there would be somebody serving the second minor penalty, and it would be a 5-on-3. Because Wish, tell me, every single player, every single hockey coach, GM, person ever would well prefer the 5-on-3 2 minutes over a 4-minute power play.
I think so, although I do love the idea, by the way, for all those people that advocate, you should let the playoff teams pick their opponents. I would also love to see teams be able to pick if they want 2 consecutive 5-on-4s or a 5-on-3. Like, I think that'd be kind of a fascinating thing too. But no, I listen, I'll be honest with you. I was in a room with a ton of people watching this game at a barbecue, and they're all asking me, they're like, why isn't this a 5-on-3? I'm like, I guess it's not a 5-on-3. So they should definitely change that rule. I completely agree with you. Also, winner, Jacob Trouba. How does he keep getting away with it, Arda? Obviously, he gets the 5-minute major dropped to a 2-minute minor during the game. They gave him a 5 in order to review it. The Department of Player Safety announces on Monday that Jacob Trouba has been fined $5,000, the maximum allowable under the CBA, for elbowing Evan Rodriguez. Boy, that'll teach him, huh? Again, like, he delivered a high elbow to Evan Rodriguez. If you look at the rule for elbowing, it is different than a legal check to the head. I've seen a lot of people say, well, the principal point of contact was the back or whatever. No, it's The only thing it says is contact with the face or the head resulting in an injury. Okay. Rodriguez left the ice. There's no way for the officials at that point to know he's not injured, although he did come back to the game. And it clearly was a check that made contact with the head. I think you can see that in the angle. Doesn't matter how much or how little, it's contact with the face or head. Based on the rule itself, I don't know how this isn't a 5-minute major, and yet it wasn't a 5-minute major in the game. Interestingly enough, there's been talk about folding the elbowing penalty into the illegal check to the head penalty, because again, like, you have two rules that are kind of governing the same thing, and one is very black and white, just contact with the head or face. The other one has more nuance, main point of contact being the head. I think at this point, if you go by the letter of the law, they blew the call, like our colleague PK Subban said. But if you go and say it should be more like a legal check to the head, well, then get rid of elbowing, just make it one rule, and it becomes cleaner, because I think the way they did it in this game, Arda, created a lot of confusion. But buddy, $5,000, that'll teach him. That'll teach Jacob Trouba.
Yeah, 5,000 followers might be more impactful than $5,000.
I mean, like, it's
just
again, like there's a pattern to this guy, isn't there?
Yes. Like to me, I think everyone will agree with this. And I'm visually showing this. If you're watching on AHL ESPN YouTube, I'll describe it for people listening on podcast. But if you raise your arm, your elbow in a chicken wing position, and then you lunge, I don't see a world in which that's a hockey play.
Yeah,
that shouldn't be happening in 2024. You can think of 3 clear instances that Jacob Trouba has done that motion and not hit the head in these playoffs alone.
Mm-hmm.
To me, obviously, the $5,000 is not going to deter the behavior from continuing.
Mm-hmm.
I honestly thought that the play yesterday was going to be like an Al Capone gets away with all of these crimes and then gets busted for tax evasion situation, but clearly not. But to me, like, what do we do? Like, I hear everything you're saying, folding, et cetera, all this stuff, but like, it's still going to happen. We're going to see another instance, I'm sure, the remainder of the playoffs.
I agree with you, man. He is a repeat offender. He's a guy that throws this kind of hit. The Department of Player Safety was created by Brendan Shanahan to change the behavior of players through punitive actions, right? And so when Trouba does this on multiple occasions, when he clearly is throwing his elbow out because a guy beat him on a play, like, that's not a hockey play at all. It doesn't pass the, can you explain to casual sports fans why this isn't a major penalty? I can tell you that from personal experience. I couldn't explain it to the people I watched Game 3 with. The reason they mulled it over as long as they did player safety, I think, is because of his reputation. I guarantee you, if Rodriguez was hurt, this is a suspension. And I think maybe if this was the regular season, it'd be a suspension. That's my guess. Loser for me, Arda, splitting with the Oilers. Congratulations to the Dallas Stars. You are not down 2-0. You probably should have been up 2-0, because this is the 8th time in the Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl era that the Oilers are tied 1-1 in a best-of-7 series. They've gone 4-3 in Game 3, so not a guarantee they come back to Edmonton and do anything in this Game 3 coming up, but they have gone on to win a series 6 of 7 times when splitting the first 2 games of a series, including both in the first 2 rounds of these playoffs. So Dallas, you had home ice. You had a chance to put the stake in the heart of the vampire, but the vampire is alive and well, having split 1-1 here. Finally, Arda, winner, Czechia. David Pastrnak scored with 10:47 left in regulation, giving them the win in the International Hockey Federation Championships in a sold-out arena in Prague. But it's not the arena celebration we want to talk about. Check out the celebration on public transit after the game in Prague.
The subway cars are literally shaking.
Yeah.
And by the way, it didn't stop there. David Pastrnak on top of a bus drinking out of the World Championship trophy.
Awesome.
This man is living his best life, and you absolutely love to see it.
The other thing I love about him is that after the tournament, he said, this is an argument for putting us into the Four Nations tournament.
Yes!
He's still bitter about being left out. He's like, we've got the World Championship. Put us in the tournament. Make it 5. I love the man. I'm so happy for him.
Ironically, it was Czechia versus Switzerland, 2 teams that will not be in the Frozen face-off or the Four Nations face-off. So anyhow, Someone that will be on this podcast, and we're very lucky to have her, is Sara Civian. Very happy to have our guest here on ESPN's The Drop. She writes for Bleacher Report and is 1/3 of the great Too Many Men podcast. Sara Civian joining us here on the show. Sara, before we start with the playoffs and the teams remaining, I just want to ask, can you pull the curtain a little bit? The Too Many Men podcast had an incredible marketing campaign with the Boston Bruins where somehow you guys got them to take an insane amount of Too Many Men calls. A great marketing thing for the podcast. How did you guys do this? Like, can you pull the curtain? Like, did you talk to the marketing department? How did this happen?
That was an inside job completely. That was guerrilla marketing to a T. They actually had the most Too Many Men calls in NHL history in a playoff run. You're welcome. Anybody who's not fan of the Bruins.
Yeah, I hope they got a mug out of it at least.
I want an explanation though, for real. Like, that was an egregious amount of Too Many Men calls.
Right. Like, how did that occur? You should send them a care package. That'd be really funny, actually. They just show up. It's like, what is this? That'd be outstanding.
Sara, you're the best for joining us. I guess the first question is, after what we've seen and witnessed so far in the Eastern Conference playoffs, could we just all agree that the Rangers are a team of destiny and we could just hand them the cup right now?
Absolutely, because, spoiler alert, get a good power play. I mean, I don't know why you don't earn extra points for an even strength goal. It's all the same. And I'm sure we'll get into this, but it's kind of like the old boys club and the new analytics darlings have joined forces to just tout even strength. And it's like, we're missing the plot here. You can just get a good power play, get elite players, and score a power play goal. They count the same.
Yeah. But what about the ethereal things that are happening? What about things like, the Barclay Goodrow run, the Wemberg overtime goal, the Trocheck overtime goal, Rempe Mania, the 30th anniversary of the 1994 Stanley Cup Championship? My hesitation before the playoffs and before this series in picking against the Rangers was that even if the numbers tell me something, and like you said, they don't tell you the whole story all the time, there was this sort of like magic, if you will, that's happening with this Rangers run. And that's my question to you. Do you feel the magic, Sara, in the New York Rangers?
Think yes, and I think this is where coaching comes in. I think Peter Laviolette is one of the most well-spoken, great behind-the-scenes coaches. I don't know, I've talked to a lot of people on the 2006 Hurricanes run, and he did so many little things behind the scenes. Like, he gave rookie Chad LaRose a camera halfway through the season, the regular season, because he thought they were going to win the cup. And he's like, take all these, he's got a little bit of hazing, but like lightly as a joke, like, take all these pictures of the team's ragging on him. Like, Chad, put the camera down, rookie. Like, what are you doing? We're in San Francisco in a random team meeting, like, put the camera down. But Laviolette really had a feeling they were going to win the cup, and this was a special team. And you can hear in what he's saying this year that he feels the same for the Rangers, and he had midway through the season.
I really hope Matt Rempe's walking around with a camera. Jiminy Crickets, guys, pose, and then
it's all the shots from the old MySpace pages, which are just angled down because he's 6'8".
Bird's eye view. No one has like the worm's eye view double chin. It's perfect. Yeah. Sara, better Paul Maurice quote: mocking the way MSG is designed and restricted for MVPs, or saying he reads the comments on stories to see how readers mock writers?
There's no bad Paul Maurice quote. He is just an absolute gem. And I love that it's like his comedy hour. It's just, we have never been so, you look at the NBA and there's maybe 4 or 5 coaches like this, but this is our first. He doesn't give a damn anymore, I think. And he's been around for so long, but he's always been this like cerebral, hilarious guy. He'd be great once the time comes, or if he wants to join any broadcast team. But I like, of course, the writers one. I mean, finally we get acknowledged for taking heat in the comments.
Yeah, and probably acknowledgement that he's a subscriber to certain websites that do have robust comment sections. The thing about Maurice that I find fascinating, and Sara, you hit the nail on the head, which is that he's kind of reached the point of not caring anymore. This dude's been coaching since the Hartford Whaler days. Like, this guy has been around for a very long time. So to now have reached his sort of delightful curmudgeon era and just get up there and riff basically for 15 or 20 minutes at a time is everybody has a second act, right? This might be his like 4th act. but he's clearly in a point of comfort now with himself and his comedy.
And we're all better for it.
Yeah, exactly.
You really are. Some changes in Carolina, your former stomping ground, Sarah. Don Waddell leaves the Carolina Hurricanes. What'd you think?
I think it's funny. We were all looking for the Rod Brindamore to leave, but he's in home in Raleigh, North Carolina. Like his home base is there. His family is there. He might get mad at me for saying this. He doesn't love coaching like he loves the Carolina Hurricanes. But Don Waddell is a pure Michigander. He has been around the NHL forever. He's been around like pure Michigan hockey, which I'm not like trying to allude to Michigan, but I'm just saying he is such a hockey guy with so many random connections. And he's like a hockey grandpa where you have the ownership in Tom Dundon, who is a new school billionaire that isn't well known in hockey, like in the boys club, you know?
Right.
So there's this dynamic where you have Don Waddell taking a lot of heat about decisions he necessarily did or didn't make, where it's like he's and Rod are the face of the franchise, and Tom is making these maybe unpopular business decisions, and they take the brunt of the public heat for it. And it's just like, remember that story? Maybe you didn't remember the story that I wrote, but after the offer sheet, I texted Don Waddell and I'm like, can you comment on this? He's like, I'm at the rodeo. And I'm like, it's not his first rodeo. But, it's because he's the president of PNC Arena too. So he was not making the most money of any GM by any means. And he's also the president of this arena. And that takes a lot of hard work. People didn't really understand. So he's doing a lot of hard work. He's a grandpa and he's taking care of his grandkids. And he's kind of a chill guy. Like he just kind of wants to make these decisions that aren't always bending over backwards and going through all these hoops. So I could have seen this coming. I like the rumors of the Blue Jackets. I think he could have some standalone work there as opposed to having to do 17 different things.
So if we were to parse it out, right, like what do you think was the biggest reason for him leaving? Do you think it was the money, which people always talk about with the way that Tom negotiates? Was it taking some things off his plate, or was it the autonomy of not having to work under Tom Dundon?
I think it's all of it at once. And I don't think there's any like serious ill will between Dundon and Waddell, but it's a little bit of a headache. And you know that going into being a part of the Carolina Hurricanes front office, anybody will publicly tell you that it's not, you're doing a lot of things to find value in situations where maybe another owner would be a little more like, here, just take this money and whatever. And it's how they work. It's how a small market can be so successful on one hand. But as you're getting older and as you're getting your flowers and finding success, I mean, he's made a lot of shrewd moves as a GM, and he wants to take an opportunity to maybe take a little load off himself while also like getting more credit that he deserves. And of course there's money and incentive involved, but right. It's all, there's a lot of stress around the Rod Brindamore contract getting done too. And I think that's probably like, all right, let's see what else is out there. And the way Dundon, a few years ago, Waddell interviewed in Minnesota to use that leverage against Dundon. And it's like, he doesn't want to do that again. Maybe he'll just take the money this time, you know?
Yeah, makes sense. Finally, for me, your writing's been great all playoff. I encourage people to go search out Sarah's post-Vancouver Canucks elimination story, which was really good. But in particular, something you actually think, I think you said it on Twitter the other day that struck me about Canadian teams. You said there has never been a documented case of a Canadian hockey fan rooting for a rival Canadian team because they play in Canada. And I want to thank you for saying that, because I don't know where this concept comes from. Maybe our Canadian friend Arda can educate us. But the idea that like a Leafs fan would back the Oilers because Canada hasn't won a cup since '93 has always been absolutely insane to me. And I give you credit for giving it voice.
I think I'd be even more angry if a different Canadian team won.
Yeah.
I mean, Arda, can you weigh in on this? Because
I'll happily.
But what do you think?
So the reason this comes up as a hot topic on every Canadian studio show every season, and it has been happening since I would probably say 2000, like year 7 of the quote unquote drought. This is the major topic of conversation. And I will say that it is quite polarizing, and there are a lot of Canadians that suddenly grow levels of patriotism. They see this almost as a way of patriotism, that it doesn't matter which Canadian team. There's only 7 of us. We're America Junior. We're the 1/10 the size of America. We live in their shadow, whatever the case may be, all the things. And they're like, just make it any Canadian team, even if it's not my Canadian team. The argument, and Sarah, you are 1000% correct in my eyes, okay? The only Canadian team that every Canadian should be cheering for is Team Canada. No gender, no age, just if you wear Canada red and white or the Maple Leaf red and white, not blue and white, on the front of your jersey, that's the team that every Canadian is cheering for.
Yeah.
From the World Juniors to the Olympics and every team in between. But the notion that, here, let me ask you both a question. Born and bred Americans, if an American team had not won the Stanley Cup for 25 years, and let's say the Nashville Predators are in the Stanley Cup final, and you both are, let's just say you both are fans in this instance, not covering it as members of the media, okay? Are you suddenly saying, you know what? Go America, I'm going to paint my face red, white, and blue, or maybe blue and gold in this instance, and I'm cheering for the Predators to beat the Edmonton Oilers in the final because they're an American team, darn it. Is that happening, Sarah?
Not for me. And I think this is where it is Canada's pastime, right? That's where that comes in, and that's where it's a little more understandable for a Canadian to do that. There are more Canadians, standalone players, so you could root for your favorite player of Team Canada who's on the Predators or whatever it is, but you're just not doing that in America. And I mean, I think if I was a fan in Canada, I probably still wouldn't do that, but I do understand that it's bred into anybody from Canada, and it is a little moment of pride. So I understand it a little bit more after that, just because I wouldn't do that in America, but I wouldn't hate on a Canadian for doing that.
25 years is a long time though, Arda. I don't know. I might have to root for the Predators.
It's absolutely silly. It's absolutely silly. Sarah, you are 1000% correct. It's nuts. It's a team. It's a city team. This is ridiculous. We could talk about this for hours, Sarah, but you have many important things to do. What's the next thing people can look forward to? Like what are you working on right now that people can look forward to reading, hearing in the coming days?
I'm shifting over to some Rangers coverage here. We're obviously the team of destiny. Gotta soak in the destiny. I really want to lean in on the Peter Laviolette stuff, because I think that's an underrated part of the magic Greg speaks of. That's sprinkled into the equation of an already good. I think Trocheck and Wenberg are two of the most underrated players in the NHL. So I think that's where some of it comes from too. Like, that's your depth. That's your depth. Come on. Yeah. But also Laviolette's maybe, I don't know, underrated. Here we go with the underrated parts of this run. So I want to hone in on that.
Sweet.
Sara Civian, part of the Too Many Men podcast. Definitely go and subscribe to the podcast as well. Check out her work on Bleacher Report. Sarah, thank you so much for joining us.
Of course. Thanks so much for having me.
All right, tonight, Game 3, Western Conference Final, Dallas-Edmonton series tied at 1. What are the 3 keys to the game, Wish?
All right, so key number 1, it looks like Adam Henrique's going to play for the Edmonton Oilers. That's really good news. In theory, he could play with Connor McDavid and Zach Hyman. That will allow them to kind of reset their depth forward. That line had a 66% expected goals percentage when they were together in the regular season after the trade deadline. So him coming back is a big deal. Key number 2. Perhaps the Edmonton Oilers will get more power play time in this game. I give Chris Knobloch credit for criticizing the officiating without really criticizing the officiating after Game 2, talking about the standards between the regular season and the playoffs. Hopefully that has a positive impact on his team. Obviously, the Oilers want to be on the power play as often as possible. They only had 2 in Game 2. I wouldn't be surprised to see them get more of those in Game 3. Finally, a big key in this game, I think, for Edmonton is trying to get away from Miro Heiskanen as much as possible. In the last 7 games of the playoffs, the Dallas Stars have scored 11 goals with their top defenseman on the ice. They have allowed 0 goals with Miro Heiskanen on the ice. 7-0 at even strength, including 2-0 in Game 2. He has played over 200 minutes in the last 7 games for Dallas, Arda. there's been a lot of discussion about Conn Smythe winners. People like Leon Draisaitl, people like Igor Shesterkin. I think if Dallas advances, you're going to see a massive case being built for this man to win the Conn Smythe.
Absolutely. And shout out to our buddy Dmitry Filipovich for popularizing the Miro Heiskanen train and the plus minus there on goals. Also, I'll just add a quick fourth key. It's always Stuart Skinner. You've been beating that drum on this podcast a lot. And quite frankly, like it's none more important. Like every single game, it gets even more and more important because we continue to mention his name and how he can swing the momentum in a game period for the Oilers.
Yeah.
So
and we should say, by the way, that ever since the reset, the Calvin Pickard reset, with when Skinner was given the bench, that he's been good. He's been real good. So
it worked.
See what happens there
for now.
Okay. Before we go, I've got a pop quiz for you, Arda.
Okay.
You know I love a pop quiz. You know I love quizzes and game shows. I got a pop quiz for you. It's time for the playoff edition of the Numbers Game, a pop quiz in which Quizmaster Greg asks Brainiac Arda to tell him what is the greater number of two things we're going to compare right here. Okay, you ready?
I'm ready.
What is the greater number, Arda? The number of multiple Conn Smythe winners, or the number of non-North American Conn Smythe winners? So the number of guys who have won the Conn Smythe more than once, or the number of people born outside of Canada and the United States that have won the award.
Oh, wow. I'll go non-North American. That's a larger number.
The answer is multiple Conn Smythe winners.
Wow.
7 of those, 6 non-North Americans.
6.
Zetterberg, Hedman,
Zetterberg popped into my head, yeah.
Ovechkin, Vasilevsky, Malkin.
Yeah. Zetterberg holds the record for being the latest draft pick to win a Conn Smythe trophy.
There you go. A quiz on top of a quiz. All right, so 0 for 1. That's okay. You've got some time to recover here. What is the greater number, Arda? Losses by Alberta-based teams in the Stanley Cup Final, or losses by Florida-based teams in the Stanley Cup Final? Alberta-based teams or Florida-based teams? Who has lost more in the Stanley Cup Final?
Alberta-based teams.
That is correct.
Yes.
It is actually tied 4-4 between the Flames, Oilers, Panthers, and Lightning. But if you go back to the 1923 Calgary Tigers and the 1924 Edmonton Eskimos, Arda, that becomes 6 for Alberta and 4 for Florida. That is correct.
I did it. Yes. I was thinking of the 80s because Calgary or Edmonton lost against the Islanders. You had Calgary lose one. I think it was 86 against the Habs. And then in the 2000s, Calgary lost one. Edmonton lost one as well. So
correct.
That was in my head.
All right. So 1 for 2. What is higher? The number of career playoff goals for Wyatt Johnston of the Dallas Stars, or the number of career playoff goals for New York Rangers playoff hero Barclay Goodrow? Career playoff goals.
Well, Barclay Goodrow has more playoff goals this season than he has regular season goals. He had 4 regular season goals, and he's already smashed that. But I feel like this is a trick question, so I'm going to say Wyatt Johnston.
Never played the Quizmaster. The answer is Barclay Goodrow with 12. Wyatt Johnston has 11 in just 2 seasons in the playoffs. So you're 1 for 3. But that's okay.
See, I psyched myself out on that one. I was like, this
classic
seems like a
mistake.
trick.
This goes back to the Marek Wyshynski days. Don't play the Quizmaster. Play the question. Number of career
should have done my
playoff
homework.
wins for Peter Laviolette, or number of career playoff wins for Peter DeBoer? Who has the higher number?
Laviolette.
That is correct. But the reason I wanted to do this question, even though you might be like, well, he's coached forever, he should have more. 88-87, Arda.
Oh, wow.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
He's got 1 more playoff win than Peter DeBoer. So by the end of the postseason, we might see DeBoer catch him. But yeah, Laviolette up 88-87 in career playoff wins. Okay.
Nice.
You are 2 for 4. This is for all the marbles to finish over 500 in the Numbers Game playoff quiz. I give you this one. Arda, what is the greater number? The number of Ryans currently in the playoffs, or the number of Sams currently in the playoffs?
Oh, my gosh.
You running names in your head right now?
Yes, I am.
Do the quick math.
Suter.
Bennett.
Sams.
I'm sorry, it's the number of Ryans.
What was the number?
Suter, Nugent Hopkins, McLeod, Lomberg, Lindgren. You could even throw Derek Ryan in there if you wanted to be cheeky. But Sam's only Steele, Bennett, and Reinhardt.
Ah.
Yeah. There
Ouch.
and Carrick too.
Yeah,
So,
Carrick. I had Carrick.
Carrick, Reinhardt, Bennett.
So 6-4. 6-4. Ah, the Ryans. The Ryans got me.
The Ryans got you.
Ah, the Ryans.
You failed the numbers game for the playoffs, but there will be other editions, I'm sure.
If you're watching this and your name is Ryan, I don't like you right now.
That's right. But if your name is Sam Ryan, then Arda's loyalties are torn. Because those are his two favorite names. All right, everybody.
Thank you for listening to The Drop every Monday and Thursday, wherever you get your ESPN podcasts or the NHL and ESPN YouTube. Enjoy the pucks. We will see you on Thursday.
Take care.